The morning sky over Tokyo burns crimson. It is April 7, 1945, and across the Japanese capital, the air hums with a tension that no one can quite name. Captain Masao Suinaga adjusts his leather gloves inside the cramped cockpit of his P-51 Mustang, the most advanced fighter in the Imperial Japanese Army Air Force. Around him, Chofu airfield stirs to life under the pale spring light. The metallic scent of oil and exhaust hangs heavy as mechanics shout orders across the tarmac, their breath misting in the cold dawn. Far to the south, faint rumblings echo over the horizon. Every man there recognizes that sound, the distant thunder of B-29 superfortresses, the harbingers of fire. But something about today feels different. The voice that breaks over Suinaga's radio, static-filled, sharp with fear, is not the calm tone of command he's used to. Unknown fighters, silver aircraft approaching from the southeast, the controller says. The southeast. Suinaga frowns. That's impossible. The nearest American fighter bases are on Saipan and Guam, both more than 600 miles away, well beyond the range of any known escort fighter. Suinaga has been flying combat missions for 3 years. He's survived dogfights over the Philippines, faced Hellcats near Formosa, Corsairs off Okinawa. He's seen the desperate eyes of men who fought with empty tanks on the way home. Yet over Japan itself, he has always fought with a kind of grim comfort, the knowledge that no American fighter could reach this far. His homeland skies were a sanctuary. Until now. Outside, his ground chief, Sergeant Yamamoto, hammers on the side of the cockpit canopy, shouting for him to scramble. Captain. Unknown aircraft heading straight for Tokyo. The words make Suinaga's blood run cold. From the south? That would mean they crossed the ocean. But the only island recently taken by the Americans is Iwo Jima, captured barely 5 weeks ago. That's 650 miles away, maybe more. No aircraft on Earth could fly from there to Tokyo, fight a dogfight, and have fuel to return. It's aerodynamically impossible. His mind flashes through fuel equations, range charts, engine limitations. His training tells him one thing. He's about to encounter something that defies logic. He tightens his harness. The Nakajima Ha-45 engine roars to life, coughing black smoke that curls into the pale sky. The scent of burnt fuel sears his nostrils. Mechanics dive for cover as the propeller washes over them. The Ki-84 rolls forward, gathering speed down the concrete strip, and Suinaga feels the familiar lift as the aircraft's wheels leave the earth. The sky opens before him, endless, undefended, yet suddenly vulnerable. Below, the city awakens. Women hurry to military factories. Children march to school with gas masks hanging from their shoulders. Few realize that this dawn is different, that Japanese airspace, safeguarded by distance and pride, is now pierced by something new. As Suinaga climbs through 10,000 feet, sunlight glints off metal ahead. Not the dark, brutish silhouettes of Zeros returning from practice flights, nor the heavy shapes of bombers. These are small, sleek, silver, moving with uncanny grace. Unidentified aircraft approaching central Tokyo, radios bark across frequencies. All defense units scramble. The panic in their tone chills him more than the cold air streaming through his canopy. He scans the horizon just in time to see them appearing like ghosts from the rising sun. Their wings flash in the light. Their movements are confident, hunters not intruders. Not bombers but fighters. Fighters that by every measure of engineering and physics should not be here. As the first silver specks grow larger, Suinaga's heart pounds. He thinks of his wife in Kyushu, her last letter folded in his chest pocket, the cherry blossoms already falling. He thinks of the years of war and the unspoken belief that Japan's homeland was untouchable. That belief now hangs, fragile and trembling, like the petals drifting in spring wind. Below him, Tokyo sprawls, factories, temples, wooden neighborhoods shimmering in the sunrise haze. Smoke from dying fires curls lazily into the air. For a moment it's beautiful. Then in the distance, a sound like tearing silk slices through the stillness. Engines, deep and throaty, American engines. There is still no explanation. No calculation that fits. Yet they are there. Silver fighters, glittering as they thunder toward the capital. Suinaga flexes his gloved hands and opens the throttle. The Ki-84 surges forward into the crimson dawn. Somewhere below, his radio crackles. All units scramble immediately. Unidentified fighters over Tokyo. He swallows hard, the taste of fuel thick in his throat, and pulls back the stick. The impossible has come to Japan. And as Suinaga's aircraft climbs toward 15,000 feet, the cold, the roar, the weight of disbelief pressing down, one haunting question cuts through his mind. How did American fighters get here? He doesn't know and cannot yet imagine that the answer will mark the moment Japanese air superiority dies, and a new era of warfare begins. Captain Masao Suinaga climbs higher into the pale morning sky, the rising sun flaring across his canopy. Every instinct, every lesson learned in 3 years of combat is screaming that what he's witnessing cannot possibly exist. Fighters over Tokyo, from the southeast? It violates every rule of warfare the Japanese Air Force has trusted since the war began. Yet, the scattered transmissions erupting through his headset leave no doubt. Something extraordinary is happening. He stares into the horizon and visualizes a map of the Pacific in his mind. Thousands of miles of open sea separating the Japanese homeland from the enemy. 4 years, those endless blue distances had been their shield, their unwritten line of defense. American bombers could come, yes, but their escort fighters never could. Fuel, range, and physics had always limited them. Over the Philippines or the South Pacific, American aircraft fought brief, bloody duels and then turned back before their tanks ran dry. But here, over Tokyo, there should be no one who could make it this far and still fight. Suinaga voices his disbelief over the radio, his breath short. Fighters from the southeast? Confirmed direction, southeast? The reply from ground control is chaotic, uncertain. No one knows where they came from. No one dares to believe what logic forbids. Far below, the vast sprawl of Tokyo flickers awake. Civilians go about their fragile routines beneath a calm sky masking the storms soon to come. Children in uniforms hurry through narrow alleyways lined with cherry blossoms. Women at Musashino's Nakajima aircraft plant prepare for another 12-hour shift assembling engines that will never reach the front. On the outskirts near the Tama River, farmers pause their work and squint upward, hearing a low rumble, deeper, stronger than any they've heard before. That is when the alerts spread, unidentified aircraft heading north over the Bay of Sagami. Possible bombers. Then the correction, panic lacing the lines. No. Single engine, repeat, single engine. Too small for bombers. In operations bunkers, Japanese officers exchange bewildered glances. Could they be carrier-based? But their fleet reconnaissance reports no American carriers within hundreds of miles. The Imperial Navy has been shattered. There are no carriers left to launch such an attack. The thought strikes Suinaga like lightning. What if they're coming from Iwo Jima? He forces himself to calculate 650 miles one way across wind, across open ocean with combat in between. Even the nimble Zero, stripped of armor and protection, could never make that journey and return. The American P-47s and P-38s he has faced were fuel-hungry beasts, powerful but short-winded. None could reach Tokyo. None could reach him. But the impossible direction does not lie. And the silver glints drawing nearer prove it. They are coming, from the south, from where Iwo Jima now flies the American flag. Only weeks earlier, the newspapers had called that island Japan's unsinkable fortress. Fortress, yes, but it had fallen. The soldiers stationed there had fought with the desperation of the doomed, packed into the tunnels of Mount Suribachi, dying beneath relentless shellfire. What they could not know then, what Suinaga grasps only now, is what that battle truly cost Japan. Not just 20,000 defenders but the safety of the sky itself. On February 19, 1945, the U.S. Marines came ashore on Iwo Jima under a rain of fire. The sands turned red. The island consumed more than 6,800 American lives, nearly all of its 20,000 Japanese defenders, and 40 days of relentless combat. The victory gave America something more valuable than territory. It gave them an airfield, 650 miles from Tokyo, perfect for B-29 bombers and, Suinaga realizes in horror, fighters. He pictures the small volcanic island in his mind, black sand beaches, sulfur vents rising like smoke from the underworld. From there, these unknown silver predators must have launched in the pre-dawn darkness, flying north over open sea for hours. Ordinarily, such flights were impossible for fighters. Fuel alone would betray them. But the silver glints ahead are proof of a design so advanced, and so daring, that it's rewriting the rules mid-battle. A new voice spills into Suinaga's headset. It's Lieutenant Akira Watanabe from Haneda Airfield, his voice trembling as he reports visual contact. Control, this is Lightning 3. I count 15, no, 20 fighters over Musashino. They're attacking the factory. They're not bombers. Static swallows his words, but the message is unmistakable. Tokyo is under direct fighter attack. The unthinkable is happening. Suinaga's Ki-84 reaches 15,000 feet. The haze clears and beneath him sprawls the heart of Japan's empire, brilliant rivers, maze-like streets, endless motion. Then streaking through the light he sees them closer now. Slick. Metallic. Moving not with desperation but confidence. Not the heavy choreography of bombers. Not the tired flight of long-range patrols. These aircraft fly like predators at the beginning of their hunt, not the end. As one turns, sunlight explodes across its wings, revealing American markings. Suinaga's breath catches. They're flying high above the bomber routes, free, untethered, defying every principle of endurance and design he knows. He grips his throttle and banks sharply toward them. At that moment, an almost sacrilegious thought enters his mind. What if the Americans have built something beyond their understanding? A machine that has changed the nature of war itself? The sky itself seems to shift color as the distance between them collapses. The impossible direction has become real. The unapproachable homeland is no longer safe. And for the first time in the war, Japan is about to fight above its own heart with no guarantee that anyone, not even its best pilots, will make it home. Lieutenant Akira Watanabe feels the vibration of his Ki-61 Hien's engine reverberate through his body as his squadron climbs into the sunrise. Radio chatter fills his headset. confused, overlapping, fearful. Contact confirmed near the Musashino plant. Someone shouts. Single-engine fighters, silver, engaging our airspace. The words make no sense. The Americans have no fighters over Honshu. They can't. From his altitude, Watanabe can see the faint lines of the city below. Tokyo stretches endlessly under a soft morning haze, the scars of past bombings still visible, blackened districts where nothing grows. Smoke curls upward from the Nakajima Aircraft Works at Musashino, one of Japan's last major engine factories. Until this morning he had believed it safe, shielded by sheer distance. But now the radio fills with panic. Unknown formation attacking Musashino. They're not bombers. I repeat, they're not bombers. Watanabe squints through the morning glare, and freezes. They are there. A dozen, maybe 20, slender, silver aircraft diving in formation. Their wings catch the sun like blades. They move with precision, unburdened by fatigue. Not lumbering like B-29s. Not cautious like long-range patrol flights. These are hunters, and beneath them, the Nakajima factory erupts in bursts of flame. What kind of aircraft are those? His wingman gasps. They move like they have fuel to waste. That, Watanabe realizes, is the terrifying truth. Across the region, pilots scramble from airfields at Haneda, Kisarazu, and Chofu. Among them, Captain Tamajiro Ogawa, veteran of the Philippines and Okinawa, leads the 103rd Sentai. As his Ki-84 Hay-8 rises through smoke, he too sees the silver invaders, machines gleaming like metal ghosts. They twist, climb, and dive with the reckless assurance of pilots fighting above their own bases. But they are hundreds of miles from any known American outpost. Radio frequencies explode with disbelief. American fighters over the capital. One voice cries. They're engaging independently. No orders, no coordination. The command network is breaking apart under the weight of the impossible. From command stations in central Tokyo, officers watch in horror through their binoculars as the invaders slice through the sky. They note, almost scientifically, that the aircraft carry two large external tanks. Drop tanks, yet they maneuver freely, unafraid to burn fuel. It is inconceivable. No pilot on Earth wastes fuel in enemy territory. Unless, of course, he doesn't have to. By 6:45 a.m., dogfights explode above Musashino and Kashigaya. Trails of vapor shear across the pale blue sky. Anti-aircraft guns thunder from the outskirts, but their shells reach too late, too high. The silver fighters are already turning, striking, climbing again with inhuman precision. On the ground, factory workers flee through the debris. The Nakajima complex, vital to Japan's air production, erupts in flame. The sound of explosions merges with the howling of twisting metal. One mechanic looks up mid-run and glimpses a pair of the unknown aircraft banking together, sunlight spilling off their polished fuselages. Later, he will whisper to reporters, "They looked like something not from this earth." In his cockpit, Ogawa pushes his Ki-84 into a banking turn and climbs toward the formation. At 1,000 yards he can see them clearly, streamlined, elegant, almost beautiful in design. Long noses housing engines with an alien roar, elliptical wings built for both speed and grace. They remind him of the British Spitfire, but they are bigger, stronger, faster. And those drop tanks under their wings, they're still attached. They should be empty. They should have dropped them hours ago. Why do they still fly as if freshly launched from their home base? Ogawa's instincts scream. These planes are unlike anything Japan has faced. Impossible, he mutters. But logic no longer matters. He pushes his throttle forward and dives. Down below, Suinaga, now joined by the remnants of his formation, watches the chaos unfold. The radio crackles with current reports from across the Kanto region. Multiple fighters over central Tokyo, unknown type, attacking industrial targets. Enemy craft maneuvering above Musashino at 12,000 feet. We can't intercept. They outclimb, outturn, outrun us. Still he has no name for them. None of them do. Only later will they learn the truth, the code that sends a chill through every surviving pilot's veins. P-51 Mustang. But at this moment they are just phantoms. Apparitions of silver tearing through the rules of the sky. The Mustangs, flying from Iwo Jima in what pilots call very long-range escort missions, have crossed over 675 miles of open sea to reach Tokyo. They escort B-29s that are already bombing the Nakajima aircraft factory. Yet their behavior defies everything Japanese airmen expect from an escort force. Instead of hanging defensively near the bombers, they break formation freely, diving down to ambush any Japanese fighter daring to rise. Their movements are predatory, confident, almost arrogant. From the southern edge of Tokyo, Lieutenant Watanabe calls over the radio, desperation creeping into his voice. "Control, this is Lightning 3. These fighters, they're not retreating. They're engaging us over the capital." Static breaks his words, but the frequency explodes with overlapping cries for assistance. It's a sound of disbelief, not strategy. Even ground control cannot comprehend what they're seeing. In the command bunker beneath Shinagawa, radar operators stare in silence as traces cover the screens. If they came from Iwo Jima, one whispers, they can reach anywhere. Suinaga banks his aircraft again. The sky around him is now a frenzy of contrails, gunfire flashes, and burning wreckage spiraling toward the city below. Every instinct inside him, every rule of combat in his blood, tells him this cannot be real. Yet as he pulls into the sun, catching a final glimpse of Tokyo's sprawling factories burning beneath the silver storm, one grim truth crystallizes in his mind. Japan's skies are no longer Japanese. And as the Mustang formations begin to split apart, hunting over the capital with the ease of gods descending from heaven, the realization takes root among every pilot still alive. The age of distance, the silent protector of their homeland, has ended. The Americans have broken it. They have crossed the impossible. The ghosts over Tokyo are real. The silver aircraft that glint above Tokyo's skies carry with them a revelation that no Japanese pilot could have anticipated. They are North American P-51 Mustangs, the most advanced single-engine fighters ever built, the culmination of American ingenuity and British engineering. Their presence here, hundreds of miles from any Allied base, is not merely a tactical triumph. It is a rewriting of what human flight can accomplish. At the heart of their design lies an improbable marriage of power and precision. The Mustang's frame, born from North American aviation's burning urgency to create a new breed of fighter, melds speed, endurance, and grace in equal measure. In 1940, it was little more than a rushed experiment. In just 120 days, its prototype took flight. But what made it legendary came later: the British Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. That engine, built under license by Packard in the United States, transformed the Mustang into something greater than any fighter that came before. With the Merlin's supercharged heart and laminar flow wings, It could reach speeds near 440 miles per hour, and with external tanks fly over 1,600 miles without refueling. It is that technology now streaking over Japan, gleaming against the pale sky. As Suinaga's squadron closes in, the Mustang pilots from Iwo Jima are executing the U.S. Army Air Force's newest and most audacious mission plan, VLR, or Very Long Range Escort. Launched before dawn from the airfields of Iwo Jima, 119 Mustangs from the 15th, 21st and 506 fighter groups have accompanied B-29 superfortresses on their bombing run toward Tokyo. Their journey covers open sea, storm fronts and treacherous winds. 7 hours of flight time in machines whose pilots sit cramped, sweating, living by the rhythm of the engine's purr. For these men, Major Robert W. Moore, Captain John Hampshire, and dozens of young flyers barely out of training, the mission is more than a test of courage. It is a defiance of physics. The P-51's range, combined with its endurance at high altitude, has shattered the final wall separating the American air arm from the Japanese mainland. The pilots call this first long escort the Tokyo Run. If it succeeds, no part of the empire will ever again be safe from air attack. In the skies above, Major Moore scans the sunlit expanse as Tokyo looms ahead. His voice over the radio is steady, almost casual. Blue flight, hold formation. We're nearly over Musashi now. Keep fuel check at 10-minute intervals. His tone hides the exhaustion. They've already crossed more than 600 miles of ocean at low altitude to conserve oxygen, navigated solely by compass and dead reckoning. Yet the Mustang's engine hums faithfully. For these men, it is more than metal and gasoline. It is life incarnate, roaring beneath them, ready to change history. Below them, Tokyo unfolds, enormous and vulnerable beneath thin clouds. The B-29s open their bomb bays, dropping steel and fire onto the Nakajima complex. The shock waves resonate even at altitude. Then Moore gives the command that begins everything. Gentlemen, drop tanks and engage. Dozens of silver shapes release their external tanks, which spiral away like falling stars. To the Japanese defenders watching below, it makes no sense. Why discard precious fuel over enemy skies? Yet to the Mustangs it signals liberation. Freed from their burden, they become predators again, agile and deadly. From the ground, Japanese spotters stare upward through binoculars. The fighters are unlike anything they've seen. Sleeker than the sturdy P-47 Thunderbolt, more balanced than the twin-engine P-38 Lightning. They shimmer as they roll, their canopy bubbles flashing with sunlight. Each one carries 6 Browning .50 caliber machine guns, capable of unleashing 8,000 rounds per minute. In their spinal symmetry and their deadly silence before attack, they seem like ghosts crafted by engineers. Back in the thick of combat, Suinaga locks eyes with one of them through the fire-distorted air. It banks sharply, clean, deliberate. The red-white-blue insignia blazes against polished aluminum. His heart sinks. This pilot, whoever he is, isn't fighting defensively. He's hunting. Suinaga fires first, the thunder of 20mm cannons shaking his cockpit. His tracers streak into emptiness as the Mustang slides away, its engine note deepening like a growl. Then it turns. The American dives, closing the gap so fast the Japanese pilot barely reacts. Bullets rip through the air, smashing past him in silver flashes. Suinaga throws his Hay-8 into a roll, narrowly escaping as shell casings rain toward Tokyo's industrial sprawl below. He's stunned. No fighter this far from base should fight so freely, so aggressively. He thinks of what his instructors told him 2 years ago at Hamamatsu. Long range means weak engines, light weapons, and limits. Yet here before him flies a contradiction of everything he knows. Miles away, Major Moore levels his P-51, breathing hard, sweat pooling under his flight helmet. His voice cuts across the radio again. Blue flight, bogies engaged southeast of Tokyo. Maintain altitude, conserve fuel after 3 minutes combat. But even he knows the truth. The Mustangs still have fuel to spare. They've crossed an ocean, are fighting above enemy capital, and will return home with enough fuel to spare for over an hour more. The world's rules no longer apply. On Iwo Jima that morning, crews watched the sky anxiously, timing each flight's arc on a map. Among them, technicians, engineers, and commanders from the 7th Fighter Command stand in silence. 4 years they'd chased a dream many had dismissed as fantasy. A fighter that could fly from the Marianas to Japan, perform its duty, and return. That dream now unfolds above Tokyo in living proof. The radio at Iwo Jima crackles faintly. Confirmation comes through. Contact established, mission in progress. And someone whispers what every man feels but cannot yet say aloud. The war just changed. Above Japan, the Mustangs move like silver waves gliding through the dawn. To Suinaga, climbing hard to intercept, they no longer seem like mere aircraft. They are messengers of a new reality. Machines that have erased distance, rewritten the laws of range, and ushered in a frightening truth. If they could come this far, then there is no place left to hide. The first American bombs fall on the Musashino aircraft plant at precisely 6:42 a.m. Black smoke billows into the skies as the city trembles beneath the weight of explosions. Among the roaring fires and the shattering glass, Captain Masao Suinaga banks hard left, climbing into the chaos. His command channel is a storm of panic. Multiple squadrons reporting contact with the mysterious silver aircraft. The impossible is happening in real time. Below, the Nakajima complex, one of Japan's last functioning aircraft engine factories, is already engulfed. Thousands of workers scatter through the industrial district, their faces blackened with soot and disbelief as agile fighters fire across the horizon. These are not cumbersome bombers. These are hunters. And they are operating with freedom that no one in the Japanese Air Defense Command thought possible. In the sky above Tokyo, the air becomes a lethal ballet of contrails and flame. Lieutenant Akira Watanabe dives at the leading enemy aircraft, lining up his guns, but the silver fighter rolls away effortlessly. Its turn is too steep, too controlled. Its acceleration defies expectation. They move like they're at the beginning of the mission, he whispers over the radio, not the end. The Mustang pilots have waited months for this moment. For them, this is a mission beyond victory, it is demonstration. From the steel runways of Iwo Jima, they had launched before dawn, each with external tanks carrying 108 gallons per side and full internal reservoirs blessed by the efficiency of the Merlin engine. They have traveled 675 miles, crossed unforgiving wind currents, and now, even after the long journey, they still fight with confidence. Major Robert W. Moore's P-51D, callsign Lu 4, leads the charge. Drop tanks, he orders from the front. We're home, boys. The metallic clunk of hundreds of release levers echoes across a sky now thick with gunfire. Beneath them, dozens of silver tanks tumble free, glinting briefly before vanishing into the smoke below. Watching from his cockpit, Suinaga's stomach twists. No pilot would discard precious fuel this far from safety. Not unless. They're not empty, he mutters in disbelief. They can't be empty. Before he can react further, machine gun fire rips through the wing of his wingman's Ki-84. The Japanese fighter bursts into a trail of smoke, spiraling eastward toward the Tama River. Watanabe's voice shrieks through the channel. They're diving on us. We can't shake them off. More banks left, his Mustang's propellers slicing through the morning haze. His co-pilot, Lieutenant Robert Carr, flies tight on his wing. Below them, another pair of Japanese fighters climbs to intercept, their nose guns flashing red. Moore speaks calmly through his oxygen mask. We're not here to run. We're here to stay. Then he rolls into the attack. The next minute unfolds like a storm. The Mustangs carve into the sky, their 6 Browning machine guns hammering in steady bursts. Suinaga turns desperately, tracing the edge of a sunbeam, attempting to gain altitude. The Hay-8 shudders as he pushes it to its limit. His crew chief once told him that the Ki-84 could climb faster than any enemy fighter. Until now. The silver plane chasing him doesn't seem bound by gravity at all. From the ground, civilians in the streets of Musashino look up to see faint trails crisscrossing the heavens, the sound of war echoing like thunder. Some mistake the glittering shapes for comets, others for angels of death. They're neither, they are technology made myth. Watanabe's last transmission crackles through static. These fighters, they're not conserving fuel. How can this be possible? His words, carried on open frequency, reach command bunkers across Tokyo, baffling operators. Since the war began, Japanese pilots had built their tactics on certainty. American fighters could only escort bombers for a few hundred miles. Past that range they had to turn back. That doctrine has died this morning. Meanwhile, Moore's squadron operates with an elegance that seems impossible after a 7-hour journey. They fight aggressively, rolling into attacks that would drain normal aircraft dry. Yet their instruments remain steady, their engines strong. The Packard-built Merlin, fine-tuned for efficiency, hums with icy precision. In another time, such an engine would have been called divine. Suinaga, gasping for air, finally locks onto one of the silver aircraft. He squeezes his triggers. Tracers cut through the morning mist, but the Mustang schemes over his line of fire. Its pilot reacts instantly, spinning in an upward corkscrew, a maneuver impossible without fuel and horsepower to spare. Moore watches the Japanese machine twist below him and dives. His gun barrels flash, 6 tongues of flame. Bullets tear across the Ki-84's right wing. Hit. Moore calls. But he doesn't linger. The instinct, to chase until empty, doesn't exist here. He knows he has hundreds of miles of endurance left. He can choose when and where to kill. In a matter of minutes, the fight devolves from defense to rout. Japanese formations scatter, broken by fatigue and shock. Lieutenant Ogawa, watching from 10,000 feet, realizes his tactical options are gone. The enemy doesn't retreat. They dominate. The dropped tanks they jettisoned were symbols not of desperation, but of abundance. The thought burns in his mind, they can fight and still go home. At the Musashino plant, the bombing continues relentlessly. Fire crews fight a losing battle against the inferno as American B-29s drift westward, black silhouettes against the light. The Mustang escort, free to move as they please, circle the dying factory and hunt lingering defenders. Watanabe's voice bursts once more across the radio, hoarse, disbelieving. They're over Tokyo itself. Not bombers, fighters. They don't need to leave. Then silence. Suinaga banks again, spotting a burning trail stabbing downward through the clouds. The last of his fuel gauges trembles. He knows the meaning of that silence. In the thickening smoke, Major Moore looks down through his canopy, watching the fires spread across the industrial district. To his men, this is victory, a validation of years of sacrifice and design. Yet amid the rising smoke, he can't help but feel the enormity of what it signifies. The war has changed, not just in range or firepower but in philosophy. Air power is no longer bound by geography. For the pilots still alive in the Tokyo sky that morning, one truth becomes unmistakable. The Empire's defense, built on isolation and distance, has been broken forever. Over the city of Tokyo, the battle transforms into something more than combat. It becomes a revelation, a shattering of what men believed possible in the air. Major Robert W. Moore and his squadron of Mustangs dive through the rising smoke columns from the burning Nakajima factory. Below them, the industrial heart of Japan writhes in fire. Above them, the once invincible defenders of the Japanese homeland struggle to keep formation as their world collapses around them. Captain Tamajiro Ogawa, veteran of 25 victories, locks his eyes on one of the oncoming American fighters. He steadies his Ki-84 Hay-8 and murmurs to himself, "Even if I die, they will not take our skies." But as the enemy closes, that confidence fractures. The silver fighter doesn't behave like anything he's seen in years of war. It dives and climbs as if gravity has forgotten it. Its pilot is fearless, fluid, and relentless, flying as though fuel is infinite and death far away. From his cockpit, Ogawa can see the American markings clearly now, the white star on blue, the red center glinting like blood through the sunlight. He rolls and dives to evade, but the Mustang follows, matching his every move with ease. The pack of Mustangs splits, some turning to guard the bomber formation, others diving freely into dogfights that even their enemy cannot comprehend. It is not escort duty. It is domination. Across Tokyo, the sound of battle becomes constant. Machine guns snapping, engines howling, anti-aircraft bursts echoing against rooftops. The city's defenders, used to fighting over foreign waters, now battle above their homes. The clouds are thick with black smoke and silver streaks, contrails crossing like scars in the sky. In one such streak, Suinaga spots a Mustang breaking formation and banking toward him. He recognizes the predatory angle instantly, the confident roll of a pilot who owns the sky. He pulls the Ki-84 into a climbing left turn, sweat flooding his gloves as G-forces crush him into the seat. The Japanese fighter's lightweight frame trembles at its limit. But the Mustang keeps pace effortlessly. Through his oxygen mask, Suinaga mutters, "How can they still maneuver like this?" He fires a burst from his cannons, orange tracers lancing toward the gleaming target. But the Mustang slips between them, answering with a line of pure precision fire. Bullets rake across Suinaga's tail. The Hay-8 jerks violently, its fuselage rattling under the hit. He dives to recover, but the American doesn't let go. It follows him, rolling inverted, wings cutting the air like razors. On the American side, Major Moore's calm voice breaks through the radio, its clarity at odds with the panic that reigns among his enemies. "Blue flight, full engagement. Stay sharp, eyes on fuel limits. But we have room to fight." His subordinates laugh briefly, the tension easing only because they know he's right. The Mustangs still have fuel. Plenty of it. Ogawa's radio crackles with chaotic orders. "Regroup near Omiya. protect the bomber's line. But there is no regrouping. The defenders are scattered, their formations shredded by an enemy that refuses to fight by familiar rules. Ogawa rolls, dives, tries to lure a Mustang into a turning fight. The Hay-8 should outturn it. Yet the American anticipates the move, pulls up, then corkscrews into a high-speed dive. The moment Ogawa realizes the trap, it's too late. The Mustang's 6 Brownings fire in perfect harmony, one line of metal fury tearing through his left wing. Fuel bursts from the punctured tank, shimmering like molten silver in the sunlight. Ogawa's last thought before the flames overtake him: they have no reason to fear running out of sky or fuel. Nearby, Watanabe still fights, diving in to aid Suinaga's position. "Captain, pull left," he shouts, trying to flank Moore's Mustang. But Moore senses it before the Japanese does. He banks right, climbs sharply, and both Japanese fighters overshoot. In one heartbeat, Moore reverses, lines up his sights, and fires. Watanabe's Ki-61 Hien disintegrates in a flash of metal and fire. Splash 1, Moore calls without emotion. High above, the remaining Mustangs reform. Their silhouettes, glittering and deliberate, cast fleeting shadows over Tokyo's burning rooftops. On the ground, civilians emerge from shelters, staring upward, bewildered by the aerial duel unfolding over their city. To them, the aircraft look like silver birds wreathed in flame, circling in patterns so fluid it could almost be mistaken for dance. In the command bunker beneath the Imperial Palace, the air defense officers listen in horror to reports flooding the lines. Every call brings chaos. Pilots outnumbered. Squadrons wiped out. Unknown enemy fighters operating with impossible range and endurance. Admiral Masaki of the Imperial General Staff presses his fist against the table. "If fighters can fly from Iwo Jima to Tokyo," he says grimly, "then no place in Japan is beyond reach." As the Tokyo battle rages past its first hour, the implications become undeniable. It is not only the destruction of factories or aircraft that matters, it is the destruction of faith. Faith in distance as shield, in range as safety, in the idea that Japan's skies belong to Japan alone. Suinaga, battered but alive, pulls away from the fight, his fuel critically low. He glances back through the haze toward the burning Musashino complex. The Americans are already reforming, their formations perfect, their discipline unbroken. He whispers through cracked lips, barely audible even to himself, "They can fight over our capital and still go home." For the first time since the outbreak of war, Japan's finest pilots realize the truth. The homeland sky, once sacred, is no longer theirs to command. It belongs to the silver hunters gliding above the city, free and unstoppable. As the fires over Tokyo swallowed the morning sky, Japan's pilots found themselves fighting not only an enemy, but the collapse of everything they had once believed invincible. The Empire's air doctrine, built upon the certainty of distance, range and home advantage, lay in ruins beneath the thunder of silver wings. Captain Tamajiro Ogawa's Hay-8 spirals downward, its left wing torn apart, fuel turning to flame. His control stick shudders violently as he fights to steady the aircraft. Through the shattered canopy, he glimpses the impossible. American fighters dancing effortlessly above Tokyo, gleaming like molten blades in sunlight, free to pursue or withdraw at will. The air that once belonged to them, the sacred sky of the Emperor, is now claimed by strangers. Above him, Major Moore guides his P-51 through a climbing roll, torque pulling against his arm as he lines up another attack. He sees the flicker of the Japanese fighter trying to recover, its tail burning. For a moment, the two worlds, samurai and engineer, tradition and technology, collide in a circle of fire. As Moore presses the trigger, 6 guns erupt in perfect synchronization, sending molten lead across the distance. The Hay-8 disintegrates in a bloom of smoke and orange light. Below, Tokyo glows red against the horizon's haze. To the north, the Musashino aircraft plant burns uncontrollably, an inferno consuming the heart of Japan's war industry. From the bunker beneath the Imperial Palace, reports pour in. 7 Japanese fighters downed, multiple factories ablaze, enemy losses minimal. General Sakurai stares at the radio operator in disbelief. A single-engine aircraft from Iwo Jima? It cannot reach Tokyo, he insists. The operator says nothing. Everyone in the room knows there is no longer any such thing as impossible. Captain Masao Suinaga, his Ki-84 scarred and bleeding fuel, watches helplessly as the sky above him fills with contrails of defeat. The radios buzz with confusion. Some call out for reinforcements, some for bearings home. Others are just fragments of men's final words lost to static. They're not retreating, one pilot gasps over the frequency. They still have fuel. They keep coming. Then silence. For a century, Japanese martial philosophy had taught that spirit, seishin, could overcome any technological gap. Courage, devotion, and sacrifice were the nation's armor. But this morning, spirit has met something colder and more inexorable: mathematics, engineering, the science of endurance itself. The Mustang's range, its stability at long distances, its relentless power at high altitude, all the equations that Japanese engineers had dismissed as unnecessary for homeland defense, now turn into instruments of judgment. As the battle continues, the psychological fracture deepens. Even the most seasoned pilots begin to doubt their senses. Lieutenant Kenji Nakamura, circling in the smoke over Chofu, spots a trio of Mustangs skimming just above the rooftops, their propellers shimmering in the infernal light. They peel apart, reform, and dive again with uncanny coordination. They fight like they have endless airfields behind them, Nakamura mutters. His wingman answers in disbelief, endless airfields, and endless fuel. From above, the American formation looks less like a squadron and more like a storm breaking across the sky. Moore's unit weaves through the chaos with choreographed precision. To the men on the ground, it appears as though these machines are alive, each one mechanical perfection made flesh. For years, Japan had exploited Allied weaknesses in endurance. Zeros could patrol vast distances, but only by sacrificing armor and self-sealing tanks. It was the price of range, the exchange of survival for distance. But the Mustang has rewritten that equation. Armor, power, endurance, it has all three. Ogawa's blazing aircraft hits the ground minutes later near the Tama River, its crash shaking glass from nearby homes. His final transmission, faint but clear, crackles into Japanese command intercepts. If they can fly here and still fight, then we have already lost the war. It is recorded, archived, and whispered later by those who survive as the defining moment Japan's pilots lost their faith. As the last dogfights fade, the surviving Mustangs reform over the wreckage. Sunlight breaks through the smoke, gleaming across their fuselages as they steady their formation. Inside his cockpit, Major Moore glances down at his gauges. 200 gallons remain. Enough to fight another hour. Enough to make it home to Iwo Jima. He speaks calmly into his radio. Mission complete. Form up for return. The radio clicks, then silence. The stillness after conquest. Below, the imperial capital lies stunned. Civilians pour onto rooftops, staring skyward. To them, the silver aircraft gliding above Tokyo embody something they cannot yet name. They do not realize that they are witnessing history's turning point, the precise moment when technology and endurance conquered courage and belief. In the days to come, Suinaga's squadron will reorganize. They will tell themselves it was only surprise, not defeat. Commanders will promise that new intercept tactics will close the gap. But deep inside, every man who saw the silver wings over Tokyo will know the truth. The invisible boundary around their homeland is gone. Spirit alone will no longer save Japan. On April 7, 1945, belief itself fell from the skies of Tokyo, trailing black smoke. The last echoes of gunfire fade over Tokyo. Trails of smoke stretch high across the morning air like dark ribbons against pale clouds. For those who survived the engagement, disbelief lingers heavier than fear. The impossible has happened, and it has a name: Mustang. Captain Masao Suinaga manages to land his damaged H-8 at Chofu, his aircraft bleeding oil and flame. Mechanics drag him from the cockpit, coughing through smoke. Around him the airfield is quiet, eerily still. The radios, which hours earlier screamed orders and panic, now lie silent. His first coherent thought settles in like ice. They could reach us, and they can come again. Across the Pacific, on Iwo Jima, the volcanic rock bought with the blood of 7,000 Marines, the ground crews of the 15th and 506th Fighter Groups look toward the northern sky. The first sparkle of aluminum appears beyond the clouds. A single P-51, then two, then dozens, shimmering like phantoms through the haze. The island erupts in cheers. Against all odds, most of the Mustangs are returning home. They've crossed 1,350 miles on a single mission, launched, fought, and returned, all without refueling. At the center of the base, Lieutenant Colonel John Jack Hayes watches as each battered Mustang touches down, some trailing smoke, others bullet holes through their wings. Yet they're home. The numbers on his notebook tell a story no strategist would have dared to write 6 months before. 9 Japanese planes destroyed, 7 factories damaged, 3 aircraft lost, none to fuel starvation. The impossible range of single-engine fighters has become routine fact. For the U.S. Army Air Forces, the mission marks the dawn of a new kind of war. The P-51D proved that airpower was no longer confined to geography. The island stepping stones, Saipan, Tinian, Iwo Jima, had become floating runways of conquest. And in just one morning, the concept of home defense for Japan turned to dust. At Allied headquarters in Guam, analysts pore over the Mustang's flight data. The numbers are staggering. Internal fuel, 184 gallons. Drop tanks, 2 at 108 gallons each. Combined with the Rolls-Royce Merlin's extraordinary efficiency, it yields a combat radius exceeding 850 miles. It's a fighter that can guard our bombers and still hunt on the way home, one engineer remarks quietly. That's the end of their sanctuary. Across the ocean, Japan's military leadership convenes in an emergency session. The Imperial Army's commander, General Umezu, studies reconnaissance reports of Tokyo. Factories in smoke. Entire airfields cratered. If they strike from Iwo Jima today, he mutters, they can strike from Okinawa tomorrow. No one in the room offers disagreement. The idea that an American fighter could escort bombers all the way from the Central Pacific to Tokyo and back had once sounded like fantasy, an absurd fear whispered in strategic briefings. By April 1945, it is reality. Back on Iwo Jima, Major Robert W. Moore climbs down from his P-51 Lu-4, his face streaked with oil. He removes his oxygen mask and lets the Pacific air wash over him. His flight crew crowds around, desperate for details. They came hard, he says, still catching his breath. But they didn't understand we could stay and fight. We could stay as long as we wanted. That phrase spreads across the flight line like myth. We could stay. For the men of the 506 Fighter Group, this success is more than tactical. It is personal. They had trained for months to survive the unthinkable. 7-hour missions across nothing but open sea, a single-engine aircraft their only lifeline. Now they've done it. They've defied every limitation known to their predecessors, every nightmare of lost fuel or dead engines. And they have ushered in a revolution. Over the next weeks, those revolutions become routine. Between April and August 1945, Mustangs will fly more than 50 very long-range missions against Japan's homeland. Each sortie, averaging 1,300 miles round-trip, proves that technology, not just valor, now decides the wars of men. American fighters will claim 341 victories against Japanese aircraft. The cost? Just 62 P-51s lost. The numbers themselves are cold, but their meaning is apocalyptic. Japan, once protected by the vast Pacific, is now only minutes away by air. To the surviving Japanese aces, the psychological blow is irreparable. Diaries recovered after the war tell the story of men watching their nation's illusion of defense vanish in a single sunrise. Sergeant Kenji Nakamura, who witnessed the April 7th engagement, would write later, "We had believed distance was our armor. But the enemy crossed it as if the ocean were a road." In the ruins of Musashino, workers sift through the ashes of the Nakajima plant, staring skyward whenever engines echo over the horizon. The silver specks they see each day become a constant, like the weather, like death itself. For them, the Mustang's presence is no longer just military, it is metaphysical, the sound of inevitability. The Empire's defeat has been written not on paper but in the sky. The Mustang has proved that the element which once preserved Japan, distance, is no longer real. Airpower has surpassed geography, and in doing so, it has erased the boundaries between safety and annihilation. As twilight settles on Iwo Jima, the returning pilots of the 15th Fighter Group sit near the runway, watching the horizon darken. The island beneath them trembles with airfield construction. Metal, sweat, and ambition forged into the foundation of a new war. Major Moore lights a cigarette and gazes out toward the sea. "They'll never believe this back home," he says. His crew chief grins wearily. "Doesn't matter," he replies. "We just changed what's possible." Above them, the sky that once divided nations now binds them in orbit of the same truth. War has entered a new dimension, the era of range where no enemy is too distant, no homeland too sacred. In the weeks following the first appearance of the Mustangs over Tokyo, a strange silence settles across Japan's airfields. It is not peace, it is paralysis. The defenders no longer speak of counteroffensives or glory. Even the bravest pilots know the truth they cannot say aloud. The sky is lost. Lieutenant Kenji Nakamura, one of the few to survive the April 7th engagement, writes in his diary by candlelight, his hand trembling from exhaustion and disbelief. "We have spent 3 years fighting Americans who vanish at the coastline," he writes. "Now they appear over our cities like ghosts and vanish again into the sky. If they can come this far, then nowhere is safe." His words reflect not defiance, but awakening, a realization that distance, once Japan's greatest shield, has turned into a trap. At the Imperial Army's Central Command, silence fills the strategy chamber. Maps of the homeland, once marked with proud red defense circles, now look meaningless. Iwo Jima, taken in blood and fire just weeks earlier, had become an American fortress, a springboard for fighters that could now reach any corner of the home islands. And farther south, the island of Okinawa is being torn apart by the largest amphibious invasion in history. Reports from Kyushu warn of what's coming next, a plan the Americans call Operation Downfall, the full-scale invasion of Japan. For Japan's leadership, the response to this impending disaster is Operation Ketsugo. It is not merely a military plan. It is the nation's death wish turned doctrine. Ketsugo envisions every remaining soldier, ship, and citizen mobilized to repel the coming American invasion. Men will fight with rifles, women with bamboo spears. Boys will throw themselves beneath tanks. Pilots, their training cut short, will steer aircraft filled with explosives into American warships. The Empire's slogan now echoes across the ruins: 100 million die proudly. But pride has become a story told to mask despair. The Air Defense Command knows that their once mighty forces, depleted by bombing, starved of fuel, cannot hope to repel the Mustangs or the B-29s they escort. Every day the Americans come deeper, longer, stronger. From Okinawa to Yokohama, from Kyushu's shores to Hokkaido's snows, the fire spreads across the archipelago. And yet, Japan continues to prepare for its final stand. Across Kyushu, soldiers and civilian militias carve trenches into coastal hillsides. Teenagers digging fortifications whisper of the coming invasion. Their officers speak of honor through death, not survival. Inside these caves, munitions are stacked beside family heirlooms. The air smells of oil, dust, and fatalism. The plan is perfect only in its tragedy: fight until all are dead so that nothing remains to surrender. Still, even within Japan's highest command, a few see the writing in the smoke. General Anami, staring at maps blackened by burn marks from Tokyo's bombing, admits to his aide, "Even if we repel them on the beaches, they will still burn our cities from the air. Our fighting spirit cannot fuel our aircraft." His voice carries neither anger nor defeat, only clarity. Each day brings the roar of more engines, the tremor of bomb shockwaves. By now 50% of Tokyo is rubble, in cities like Toyama 90%. The bombers no longer target only factories, they extinguish entire neighborhoods, whole histories at once. The arrival of the P-51 Mustangs only deepens the hopeless symmetry of Japan's collapse. Their ability to escort bombers anywhere in the empire means that even isolated towns, once thought untouchable, now tremble at the sound of engines. The precision attacks that follow cripple not just production but morale itself. Civilians no longer gaze upward in prayer. They flee or they freeze. Yet among the pilots who remain, some still dream of redemption. Young flyers at Yukachi swear by Ketsugo's promise of victory through sacrifice. In training fields reduced to mud, they practice takeoffs they will never survive. Each plane will destroy one ship, their instructor tells them. Each man will become a thunder god. They nod, and for a fleeting moment, hope flickers. Hope not to win but to die beautifully. Far from these crumbling airfields, deep in air raid shelters, Families huddle around radios broadcasting military hymns between static and propaganda. The imperial minister's voice trembles as he cautions against defeatism, reminding citizens that the emperor watches, that the spirit of the samurai endures. But the people have seen the new gods of war, sleek, silver, and tireless, and they know that spirit cannot outfly fuel and steel. On April 16, a week after the Mustang raid over Tokyo, the Imperial General Headquarters issues its Ketsugo orders for full homeland defense. The archipelago is divided into 7 defensive zones. Armies are mobilized for the decisive battle. But even on paper, the plan is delusion. Japan's fuel reserves can sustain only weeks of combat. Training time for kamikaze pilots is down to days. Ammunition allotments are cut to half standard. Transportation between zones is crippled by bomb damage. The Empire is raising an army it cannot feed to fight a war it cannot win. Still, propaganda endures. The newspapers announce new victories over phantom fleets. The radio calls for courage against the invading barbarians. And in this twilight of hysteria, belief becomes not morale, but madness. Patriotism bends beneath the weight of clarity, and all that remains is ritual preparation for annihilation. Meanwhile, the American advance presses forward with mechanical precision. On Guam, mission planners chart the next VLR, very long-range, escorts. 7 more Mustang operations will follow the April 7th mission before the summer ends. Each one deepens the shadow over Japan's future. Major Moore and his men now glide effortlessly over the very skies where Suinaga once ruled. The hunters of one morning have become the heralds of a new strategic age. They will not only win battles, they will destroy the illusion that oceans can protect nations. As for Suinaga, his plane is found weeks later in a field outside Tokyo, its fuselage riddled with bullet holes. The pilot, still strapped to his seat, died from a single .50 caliber round to the heart. In the pocket of his flight jacket is a letter to his wife, never sent. When the war ends, I will bring you spring flowers from the airfield. There would be no spring. Only fire, steel, and silence. By the summer of 1945, Japan awaited invasion not as empire, but as ghost. A nation clinging to honor while burned by the very skies it once believed divine. By the summer of 1945, the Japanese Empire was a nation gasping beneath flames. Cities once lit by lanterns now glowed only with the orange of firebombs. The thunder of engines had replaced the sound of bells. Above the ruins, the silver ghosts, the P-51 Mustangs, continued their relentless patrols, symbols of a new truth. No fortress, no island, no empire was ever unreachable again. The battle on Iwo Jima had given America more than a strip of volcanic rock. It had given them the ability to rewrite warfare itself. That island, desolate, sulfuric, soaked in blood, became the bridge across the Pacific. It transformed death into reach, sacrifice into strategy. Marines who died crawling through the ash of Suribachi had unknowingly carved the runway from which the Mustangs would fly to Tokyo. Their victory made the impossible mission possible. For the Japanese people, the sound of propellers became both dread and inevitability. P-51 formations swept across Honshu like clockwork, escorting squadrons of B-29 bombers by day and hunting at dusk. Every time those sleek silver wings appeared, another layer of hope peeled away. Yet to engineers, historians, and tacticians, those same wings represented the triumph of calculation, how science and will could merge to reshape destiny. In the war's final months, Japan lived under skies of metal. Children practiced running to shelters before they'd learned to read. Pilots who once ruled the Pacific now flew on borrowed fuel in borrowed time. The empire had become a trembling relic of belief confronted by modernity's cold arithmetic. Courage could no longer conquer combustion. Major Robert W. Moore and his unit flew 23 more missions after that April morning. Each time Tokyo appeared smaller, the resistance weaker. On clear days he could see Mount Fuji through the haze, its serenity at odds with the chaos below. "We're flying through history," he once told his wingman, "only no one realizes it yet." He was right. Every roar of a Mustang engine was a turning page in the story of human warfare. Meanwhile, across Japan, survivors like Flight Sergeant Kenji Nakamura tried to rationalize what had happened. He no longer believed in the invincibility of the homeland. His flying days were over, his diary now his last battleground. "We built our walls from belief," he wrote, "and they crumbled like smoke. The Americans built theirs from engines, and they reached us across the sea." When Japan finally surrendered in August 1945, the Mustangs roared overhead once again. Not in battle this time, but as watchful guardians of the peace they had forced. Their metallic echoed hum over Tokyo became the requiem for an empire, the end of a story written in blood and invention. The North American P-51 Mustang would go on to define the modern fighter. Fast, efficient, lethal, long-legged. Its marriage of American design and British Merlin innovation changed the very concept of range. It made oceans meaningless, borders fragile, and distance itself a strategic illusion. Where once commanders measured safety in miles, the Mustang reduced it to minutes. Inside the museums that now house them, these aircraft gleam as artifacts. Perfect, frozen testaments to a time when the world learned that mastery of the sky meant mastery of fate. Crowds gather around their polished propellers, unaware that every bolt and rivet carries a whisper from April 7, 1945, the day men looked up and saw the future arriving in silver. And somewhere in a rice field outside Tokyo, the wreck of Masao Suinaga's Hay-8 still lies buried beneath earth and time. His final radio words, recorded faintly by ground control, remain one of history's quietest eulogies. How did they get here? That question became more than an epitaph for a lost pilot. It became the threshold of a new age. The answer was not luck, nor miracle, nor mystery. It was human ingenuity, the relentless pursuit of turning the impossible into reality. The world after 1945 would never again be the same. From that day, distance ceased to be a defense. The P-51 Mustang had proven one eternal law of progress, that every frontier humanity declares unreachable eventually becomes a runway. So the next time you see one, gleaming beneath sunlight at an air show, wings polished to mirror brightness, remember the men who once looked up in terror and wonder. The day they arrived, the sky itself changed forever.